Hello Christine, nice to see you. You're always quick off the mark, always first here. It's lovely of you to join me every week, thank you. Did you watch the show this morning? Hi Natasha. What a brilliant show. Can't think why Lisa was ever concerned that people wouldn't like these folders, are you? I think they're amazing. Can't wait for mine to arrive. Not that I've ordered any, of course. Might have ordered them all, but don't tell anybody, i.e. hubby, because he doesn't know. Hi Elizabeth. Hope everybody's well this afternoon. It's bright and sunny here at the moment. It was absolutely teeming down this morning. But sun's come out now and it's dried up a little bit, but I can't see it lasting. We're supposed to be getting snow tomorrow, so it's I don't like the snow, to be honest. I don't mind it cold, don't mind it windy, just don't like the snow and I don't like the rain. Yeah, fantastic shows, weren't they, Natasha? She's just so natural. No, me, Elizabeth. I'm really excited. Really excited. That looks like the three of us today. But that's fine. I would imagine everybody's exhausted from watching the very fast moving shows this morning. Oh dear, hail. Oh, that's not very good. It's can be quite dangerous, hail, actually, can't it? Glad we don't get hailstorms like they do in America. Hi Wendy. Nice to see everybody this afternoon. I think we'll make a start because whilst it's not a difficult card, it's a little bit involved in how you work it out, etc. So we'll get stuck in, and then if anybody else joins us, then all well and good. So before I start, I have a couple of apologies to make. Hi Franca. Yeah, it's very difficult to resist, isn't it? I think we're all pretty much in the same boat. I think it should be Crafting with Lisa HORTON, Crafts Anonymous, the name of the group, to be honest. But anyway, that's another story. So let's get cracking then. This is the card I'm going to be making today. And as I say, I have a couple of apologies to make because when I planned this, everything I was using was in stock. Unfortunately, since I planned this, some of them have disappeared. The main one being the Peony Blooms stamp and die set. There was only a couple in stock, I think, when I started, and now there aren't any at all. So yeah, LHC Addicts, that's a good one, Elizabeth. Yeah, I think that's good. So now it's completely out of stock. I don't know whether Lisa will be restocking it. I can let you know about that when I've had a chance to speak to Lisa, which won't be for a couple of days because I think she might be a little bit busy. So this is the first set I've been using, and this is the Peony Blooms, which I said unfortunately is currently sold out, but it is a fantastic set. And this card, you could actually use any of the big floral stamps that Lisa's bought to you recently, so the Summer Petunia or the Helianthus. You could use either of those, and I would tend to go for the big flower in the set as opposed to the smaller flower, and I'll explain why in a minute. So that's the first thing that I've used that has sold out since I planned my live. The second thing that has sold out that I've used is the Be Beautiful panel dies. A fabulous set of dies because not only can you use it as it is, but you can snip these little bees out, which is exactly what I've done here. Now there were some in stock when I planned this, but again, since I planned it, they've sold out as well, so I apologise for that as well. Right, the things that are in stock, the masking paper that you will have seen on, hi Anne, on Lisa's shows this morning, that she puts on with the little stamping press, which I think is just such a super little idea, particularly for you know, scrapbooking crops or little craft workshops that might eventually get back on plan at some point in the future, that would be ideal to just nip in your bag and take along with you, so that you know, when you're stamping, it's a lot easier. So I think that's a great idea. And the masking paper, as I say, which comes along with it, it is also available separately on the Lisa's website, and that is still in stock as well. I think there's about 20-ish still in stock, so there's plenty of that to be had if you want some of that. Very useful. Now, Lisa makes her own stencils, and a while back she bought a set of 2 stencils out, which were the triangles and the hexagons. Now they're 8x8 stencils, and there are 7 apertures on the hexagons, 3, and 6 on the triangles. But the thing I like about Lisa's is this little bit here. This little piece here, if I show you actually on the stencil, this is the triangle one. This makes a perfect border around your cards. It's just such a simple idea, but it's perfect. If you just went round the edge of your card with that, what a finishing touch that's going to make, without using ribbon or anything else. That's perfect. And she does that on all of her stencils, well, the ones that are out at the moment. So there's circles and rectangles, there's triangles and hexagons, and they've all got this additional little piece on here, which I think is just genius. So that's the stencils that I'm using. I'm using the hexagons today, but they come as a set of 2. And they are £10.99 for both, and there are about 15 still in stock, so if you wanted to grab those, then do. The stencil that I'm using, if you look, you should just be able to see in the background all these waves on here. I didn't want to leave the card stark white. I just wanted to give it just a little bit of interest behind the flower, apart from the sort of honeycomb effect. So I went with one of the stencils, and I've used this one here. It's not really a repeating pattern, because of the way the waves go. You can't really match it up, but I don't think you can tell on there that it isn't matched up, because everywhere where it would be matched is hidden by some of the other stamping, so it works perfectly. You could use any of the background stencils. I mean, there are this set as well, which are also perfect. I did contemplate using this one, because this is a repeating pattern, and you could go across the back of the card with that quite easily. But I just thought it might make it a bit too fussy, and it might just detract too much from the main flower stamp, so that's why I stuck with the waves on that one. And then finally, for my sentiment, I've used the Essential Words stamp and die set. Perfect little set, because you get the stamp and then the die to cut it out with. And what I've done is I've also cut out the same without stamping it, just in a darker card, and then offset it and stuck the sentiment to the darker card behind it, just so that it lifts it a little bit. Okay, so that's the basis of my card. Now, the first thing I did was stamp my image and colour it in. Partly because you don't want to sit here and watch me colouring in, because it takes ages, and it would be an hour and 20 minutes long live rather than roughly half an hour. So I've done that bit first, and what I did was I stamped it in Memento black, and then I used a clear embossing powder over the top of it. The Memento stays quite wet, so there's just time to use your embossing powder and then heat emboss it, and that means then you can use your markers on that without your markers bleeding and without it pulling any of the black ink that you've used to stamp the image. So that's why I've embossed it. So that's all coloured, and I've used my Copic markers to colour it, and that's the range of pens that I've used. I'm not going to go through them all individually. If anybody wants to know what colours I did use, then just pop me a message either in the live or on the YouTube link when I put that in later, and I'll list the colours that I've used. But I think that's quite effective. So next thing I want to do is add my hexagons. Now, what I would suggest is don't rush into this card. It's not difficult, it's just a little bit involved. And if you rush it, you'll do what I did. So as Heidi said, we make the mistakes on your behalf so that we can tell you what not to do. Now, the first attempt I had, I used the smaller flower stamp and the larger hexagon, which is the same one that I've used today. But what I didn't do was plan where the hexagons were going, so that when I came to actually ink through the stencil, I couldn't line them up properly. So they were not uniformed. So like this one has got a definite line to it. These haven't. And I got so far and thought, no, it's not working, don't do it. So then I changed my mind and thought, well, I'll go with the smaller hexagon, which is the smallest aperture on the stencil sheet. But again, I did the same mistake. I didn't plan it properly, and I was sort of winging it a little bit. So I decided to scrap that one as well. I shan't scrap the flowers. I will cut the flowers out and I will use those on another project. So then I got a little bit more carried away and put the smaller hexagons with the smaller stamp. But again, I don't know, the smaller stamp just doesn't do it. It doesn't give the same impact that I wanted to give. So I scrapped that one as well. So those are the things not to do. And this is how I would suggest planning it out. It's a little bit time consuming, but worth the effort. Right, first thing I'm going to do is mask off my flower. Obviously I'm using Lisa's masking paper to do this. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's well worth taking a little bit of time just to get it in the right place. And the thing I like about Lisa's dies that go with these flowers is that it gives you a little sort of frame around the image, so it's not actually cutting right to the image. You don't have to get it right on top of the flower, if you like. There's always a little bit of space around the flower. So that's masked off now, and that's perfectly safe. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw around these. I've got a reasonable pencil. Is draw around the piece that comes out of the stencil. So you get all the pieces. So these are your apertures, and these are the pieces that come out of them. So you can use these as a mask, which is what I'm going to do here. And I'm just going to draw around each shape roughly, very lightly. And of course I can go over the masking paper because it's paper and I can draw on it. And then because I can see what I'm doing, I can plan out where these hexagons are going without ruining my card. Because after I've spent all that time colouring my flower in, I don't really want to ruin the card. Didn't draw the line at the bottom there. Now these lines aren't going to be in your way or anything when you're finished. You can get rid of these because they'll just rub out perfectly easily. Now I'll just put that there, and then I'll draw that one in as well. And what this will do is when you come to use the stencil, it will give you a guide where to place your stencil and then do your inking. So you see now I can fit this in here perfectly well because it's now a uniformed line of hexagons rather than random like I was trying to do it at the beginning. Don't mind it going off the card a little bit. That's not a problem. Obviously it's your choice. If you don't want it going off the card, you just have to move these over a little bit or move your flower over. It's entirely up to you. It's personal choice. This is just the way I chose to do it. The other way you could do it is to use a ruler and draw yourself 2 columns. So use your mask and draw yourself 2 lines down the card and then use your stencil between those lines. And the only problem with doing that is you can't really see where the previous hexagon was. So doing it this way, you're always going to be able to see the hexagon inside your stencil. You'll see what I mean in a second when I just start the inking. So I'll just finish this off and just put one more up at the top just to finish it off. So I don't really want too much white space on this side because my white space is on the other side and I don't want it on both sides. So now you can see that you've put your shapes out and you've fitting them all in. They're all sitting uniformly and nothing's going to overlap. Okay, so then take your stencil, and I've already masked off my aperture that I'm going to be using because I didn't want to be fiddling around with it today while I was live. But just a little tip, you see these are all sitting really nice and flat. When you take your post-it notes off your post-it note pad, instead of peeling it off like that, because that's what happens, it will curl. If you take it from the edge and pull it straight, it won't curl and it'll sit flat on top of your stencil. So just a little tip that stops all your post-it notes curling up. Right, so now we're going in with the inking. Now you can see when I put my stencil over that line, I know that if I'm sitting inside each of those lines, my stencil is going to be in the perfect place ready to ink it up. Now what I'm going to do is do one colour first, and then I'm going to go back and do the second colour, because it's not a flat yellow. I mean, honeycomb isn't one colour, is it? It's not. There are shades of all sorts of colours in there. So what I wanted to do was try and create a little bit of depth on the honeycomb shapes. So I'm doing my yellow first, and then I'm going to go back with an orange over the top. The inks I'm using are Distress Oxides, and I'm using Squeezed Lemonade and Spice Marmalade. Excuse me. I was going to use Mustard Seed, but I found that Mustard Seed was a little bit too dark, and it just sort of overpowered what I wanted. Really, it was just too dark, and I didn't like it, so I scrapped that idea. Did a lot of scrapping on this project, and of course I'm using Lisa's Wonder Brushes. Do you know why they're called Wonder Brushes? Go on, I'll give you a couple of seconds to leave me an answer and tell me why you think they're called Wonder Brushes, and then I'll tell you why I think they're called Wonder Brushes. We see how beautifully they blend your inks so that you've got no lines, no smudges. It's just perfect. Now, I know there's not a great deal on this shape, but if I don't put it in, it's going to look odd, and I don't want that. So I'm just working my way down the yellow first, making sure that my stencil sits just inside my pencil lines where I drew them when I was planning it out. So that's those. I'll go back up to the top here and do these down this side. It doesn't take long. It's just, as I say, it's a little bit involved to plan it out, but it really is worth the extra effort. I think it is anyway. I mean, it doesn't take a huge amount of time, does it? I mean, it didn't take me that long to sit and draw them out. But it just means that when you come to add your ink, you know you're going to be in the right place and you're not going to scrap several pieces of card like I did. And at the end of the day, yeah, I know it's a piece of card, and what's a piece of card between friends? That could be one reason, Christine. They are wonderful, but that's not my reason for them being called Wonder Brushes. I think they're called Wonder Brushes because you'll wonder how you ever got along without them, because I certainly do. I have got other brushes, but I can't remember the last time I used them, because these are they're just perfect. They blend beautifully, and this, flexibility here on the head is just absolutely perfect, because you can put as much or as little pressure on as you want to. It's entirely up to you. If you really want it, and I will be using it lightly afterwards when I do the wavy bit at the back, so you'll see the difference between the light and the dark. Okay, so I've done all my yellow, and you see they're all in exactly the right place, exactly where I want them to be. Now what I'm going to do is just go through and add my orange, and like I said, I'm using spiced marmalade for this, and all I'm doing is adding a tiny little bit to one edge, one side of the hexagon shape. So I'm sort of using the brush on the edge. It's, I don't want to go too mad, but obviously where that flower is sitting, there's going to be a shadow behind it. It's obviously going to cast a shadow behind it, and that's what I want to get through on this by doing this inking through the stencil. So if I lift that off, you'll see that I've come off the masking paper and across onto the hexagon. Now the other thing I'm going to do is just basically add a little bit of orange in the background, and then using the brush that I used for the yellow, not adding any more yellow ink, I'm just going to blend it. So it's taken all the sort of effective sponging the orange, but making it part of the honeycomb, if you like. So again, just coming off the edge of that flower slightly, and I won't need to do very much on this one because there isn't very much of the hexagon showing, but you see what difference it makes already, just adding that little bit of orange to your yellow. And you wouldn't just want to leave them stark yellow, because it just, I don't think it would look right. So I'm just going to come off the masking paper onto the hexagon, so that I'm creating a little bit of depth behind that flower, and then just along the edge, a little bit of orange, and then blend it in. Perfect. So I'll just go across and finish all of these. Now I did toy with the idea of sort of doing a step by step and having some of this already done, but to be honest it doesn't take that long, and I think sometimes it's nice for, I know we've got a lot of new members in the group, and a lot of people that sort of perhaps haven't been crafting for a long time, so looking for hints and tips on how to do things. So hopefully this will do the trick. And it's quite, I do get a little bit lost in it, so if I go quiet I apologise, but it is quite therapeutic doing this inking, to be honest. Now you see now why I wanted to do all the yellow first, because now I'm coming off the post-it notes with my orange ink. If I'd have used the yellow and the orange at the same time going all the way around, then I wouldn't have, it would have looked a bit muddier, because I would have sort of transferred more of the orange into the yellow before I wanted it there. So that's why I decided to do all one colour first and then go back in with the other colour. Now there is a little bit of leaf there, so I'll just come around that, just ink the edge there, and then add a little bit of colour, blend it in, and the last one exactly the same as I've done all the others, just working off the post-it note. You don't always need to add any extra ink either to your brush, because coming in off these post-it notes you'll be able to drag in a lot of ink as well. The only time you'll just add a little bit of ink is when you're just finishing off this extra little bit for depth. See? I quite like that. I think that's worked really well. Now, because I'm going to use that brush again, and I'm going to use it just on my squeezed lemonade, I'm just going to clean these brushes off. I'm going to clean this one off because I don't want any orange on here. And this is how I would recommend you clean your brushes if you've managed to get any when you use them, because it is just as easy as brushing it off on a piece of kitchen towel or a cloth. Hi Natalia, no problem. Right, if you get these brushes, I personally would keep the yellow for yellows and oranges, because although you can take the ink off, I think sometimes it tends to leave a little bit of yellow residue, so if you don't want that, I'd keep your yellow brush for yellows, and then all you need to do is just gently go round and rub off all that pencil, and try not to smudge your ink like what I've just done. See, when I took the ink off yesterday, I think what I'll do is leave it and do it later, because I can get rid of that. I can use my little residue eraser or a pencil rubber, and I can take that off. So because this is a little bit wet at the minute, I'm just going to leave that, and I'm going to do that later. But you can see I did this one exactly the same and rubbed all the pencil marks off, but I did leave it to dry. So because this is still a little bit wet, I'm going to leave that for now. So next thing is to add my wavy stencil background, and this is the stencil I'm using, and I'm going to make sure that it's right on the edge, and all I'm going to do is just brush through with my squeezed lemonade very, very, very lightly, so that I'm hardly touching the card. I'm hardly touching through the stencil. Does help if you've got any ink on your brush there. And that really, it's as light as I want it, because as I said to you at the beginning, I don't want it to be the main attraction. I don't want it to detract from the main aspect, which is the flower and the honeycomb. So all I really want is a hint of a wave in the background. So this is really, really light, and I'll show you how light in a second when I move the stencil. It is there, but it's hardly there, and that's because I'm hardly putting any pressure at all on this stencil. See? So there's virtually nothing there, but there's enough there to give you a bit of a background and just to take away that stark whiteness on your card. So as I said, it's not a repeating pattern, but you can sort of line it up so that when you take all your masking paper off and everything and you've put your sentiment on, nobody would ever know that it's not a repeating pattern, because there's only you knows that. And when your sentiment is on top of your card, it sort of draws the eye away from the background. So it's see, now I would defy anybody to tell me that that isn't a repeating pattern on this background here. You can't tell, can you? I know it's quite light. I don't know whether you can see it on the camera, but it just gives enough of a background just to give it a little bit of interest, but not to detract from everything else that you've put on. And I am going over this bit as well, but not necessarily over the honeycomb. I'm just going through the little bits in the middle, basically because I want everybody to think that that background is across the whole of the card. Okay, so I'm not too fussed about that bit, but just enough. See, I think that looks fab. Modest, aren't I? So, next thing is to take off the masking paper. Now, it's a little bit fiddly because obviously you've put it down on top of your image and then you've inked over the top. So you've been putting pressure on it, but it will lift dead easy off your card, and then you can put it back on your carrier sheet if you wish, or you can put it on a piece of acetate or just a piece of copy paper really. I keep in mine on the carrier if I can find it. There it is. So I'm just going to place it back down on there. It's not going to stick flat, but it's enough to keep it clean and mean I can use it again next time I want to use it. Okay, so now all I've got to do is add in my little embellishments, and there's my sentiment at the bottom. And as I say, these came from Lisa's Essential Words, which I think are just beautiful. What a gorgeous font this is. I just think it's really so attractive. I'm not putting these on 3D. Hi Helen. I'm just going to put these flat because the only 3D element to this card is going to be my little bee. I wasn't going to have any of it as a sort of a 3D element, because I am conscious of the fact that people are posting cards and you want to try and keep the costs down when you're posting, but I think sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. And I think it's worth it, because I think if you put the B flat, I don't think it would look quite the same. My opinion, obviously. You can put it flat, personal choice again. There's no right or wrong way in crafting. It's however the mood takes you and whatever you think looks right. So these are just really ideas to for you to use, adapt to whatever stamping product you've got. And obviously I think Lisa's are the best. I wouldn't be in any way biased, but I am. And then I'm just going to add my little bee over here. Now what I'm going to do is, actually, I think I'm going to add him here, and he will be 3D, but I'm not going to add him yet because this ink isn't dry and I want to take off the pencil lines. So trust me when I say it will look like that. So it will be 3D like this one. As you can see, this one's raised up off the card and the other one will look the same. So I don't think that was a difficult card. As I say, it takes a little bit of planning, but I think it's well worth it. Now, in the group this morning, on one of the many threads about how fantastic Lisa's shows were, there was a lady who said she was wondering what inks and blending and things to do. So I did say that I would just quickly go through a couple of different blending ideas with her. So this one, I've used Lisa's embossing folders, not the current ones. This was from the first set. This is the padded quilt. And I've used on here Adirondack Earth Tones stamp pads. And these are the colours that I've used on here. I mean, I personally think this looks orange, not ginger, but those are the colours that I've used. Now, yes, they work and they blended okay, and I've used Lisa's brushes to do this, but I don't think they blend quite as nicely as the Distress Oxides. I mean, let's face it, the oxides have got a beautiful chalky finish and they do blend perfectly, and I mean that's how they were designed. So the finish you get with oxides is way better than this. So those are the earth tones on the Adirondack. Then I did the deck plate, and I've used the Adirondack lights for this. Lights and brights, there's a mix on here. So there's 3 colours on here, and these are they. Willow, Mountain Rose and Peach Bellini. And again, yes, they blend, and they blend quite nicely, and they are nice colours, but I still don't think they give as nice a finish as the oxides do. So those are the lights, and then these were the brights. Now this is my favourite out of the three that I've done here. So these are the brights that I've used: Raspberry, Sunset Orange and Pool. And again, I've used Lisa's brushes to brush these, and you'll see that when you come to join the two colours, how beautifully they blend, how beautifully they merge together. There's no harsh lines, and that's the beauty of Lisa's brushes. They don't give you any harsh lines because there are so many bristles here on this. I'm going to get yellow all over my finger now. Because there are so many, I'll use a clean one. Because there are so many bristles on here, you won't get any harsh edges on your blending with your inks, whatever inks you use. Now I know Lisa uses the Crafter's Companion Harmony pads, and they do look beautiful. I can't justify buying any more ink pads because I've got more ink pads than I care to think about. But what I thought I'd show you was just how beautifully the oxides do blend. I'm going to use the three colours that I've used, the two colours that I've used on my card, plus the Kitsch Flamingo, which is the latest colour from Ranger. And I love this pink. So I'm just going to quickly use the yellow first. And again, I'm going so lightly, you can hardly see the yellow. But you can see how easily the colour transfers to the card by using the Wonder brushes. I think they are one of the best products Lisa's brought to us. So that's yellow that I've added. Then I'm going to add a little bit of orange, not much, just a little bit, just randomly across the card. And you can see how easily these are blending. And then on top of all of that, I'm just going to add some of the pink Kitsch Flamingo. So I'm just going to go round the edge of the leaves. And you can see that, as Lisa said this morning, I'm actually only inking the embossing, because the embossing is so beautifully deep. Oh, Natalia, you do. Oh, it's gorgeous. And it's so, it blends so beautifully with other colours. It's just fabulous. I know Lisa uses the pink on the Harmony, and that looks fab, but I love this. So you see, don't really need very much ink at all to change a piece of embossing from stunning to amazingly stunning. And I think the one thing I would say with blending is just practice. Get some copy paper and some stencils and just practice, because that's all it is at the end of the day, is just practice. I could never blend like this when I first started crafting, and it is simply because I've been to classes and people have shown me what to do. People have sat and coached me on different ways. I mean, we all started with sponges, didn't we? And yeah, sponges have their place, and you can still use sponges. If you wanted to, you could use a sponge. Hang on, I'll get one. And if you wanted to finish that off or add a little bit of extra, you could actually use a sponge. I mean, you could do it with a brush. You could use a sponge and just go around the edge, just to lift the edge of the piece that you're working on, so that when you come to put it on a card, you can see it sort of lifts it from the card base. If I just get a blank card out and show you what I mean. See, it just lifts the edge of the card. It just, to me, makes your piece of embossing just leap off the page at you, if you know what I mean. I just think it makes all the difference. And if you've done some embossing in the background, say you've got some of the deck plate in the background and you sit that in the middle, and I just think I think they're perfect, and I cannot wait for the new ones to arrive, because they are even better because they've got the dies with them. And the Alstrom area I think is amazing. I know there's no die with that one, but I think that is going to be my go-to folder. So there you go, that was just a little quickie extra piece. This jar is one of Lisa's jars, and all I've done is run it through the deck plate embossing folder, go over it with Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide, and then add some of the Stamperia wax that Lisa had on the show, the Cerantica antique wax. Fabulous stuff, and you don't need very much at all, and it just gives it an impression of being a metal jar rather than a glass jar. This is the gold wax on here. This is the turquoise wax. So you see it's so simple to use. If I just quickly add a little bit of the turquoise, if I add it on the black actually, because that's more striking, and you don't need very much at all. I hate using my fingers for this because it is very messy. You don't use very much at all. I've got way too much on there, but all you do is just rub it on your card, and it just lifts that deck plate perfectly, and it just makes it look like metal. Well, I think it does anyway. And if you've got stuff on your background that you don't want there, use your eraser and take it off, and then all you're left with is the actual deck plate, the actual metal bits, and what you'd call them rivets. You're just left with those highlighted with the wax, so you can get rid of that. But I mean, how easy is that? How quick and easy to change a piece of embossing from plain and ordinary to metal looking. I think that's perfect. And if you haven't got one of these little erasers, well, you need one. I'd be lost without mine because I'm so messy. But so there you go, just a few ideas on how you can change your embossing. Hi Jill. Quick and easy, dead simple. Just lots of different ideas on how you can emboss and add ink or not add ink, whatever you think. So I hope you enjoyed the card. I'm sorry I didn't add my bee, but I will add the bee, and I will put a photograph in the group afterwards, and I will upload the video onto YouTube. But I didn't want to rub my pencil marks out and make a mess, so I'll do that in a little while. There won't be a live from Claire next week. She's got some family commitments, so she won't be able to do a live next week, but Heidi will be back on Wednesday, and all being well I should be back on Friday. There's a little bit of doubt about it, but hopefully I'll be fine. And Lisa's back on your screens on the 2nd of April with a pick of the day. I know it seems quick, but unfortunately it's just the way the schedule worked this time. But again, what can I say? The stuff that Lisa will be bringing to you are fantastic, and you won't be disappointed. So I love you and leave you. I know it was a little bit longer, but I just wanted to go through that blending for you, particularly because I said I would. Gail, was it you that asked? I can't remember now, but I hope it helped, and if you need any more hints and tips and advice, it might be worth you going and having a look at the YouTube channel. There are plenty of videos on there that will show you umpteen ways of using the blending brushes and blending your inks. So if you need any more help, just give us a shout. There's always somebody around that can give you a bit of advice. So hopefully I'll see you next Friday, and Heidi will be with you on Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Have a fabulous weekend, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.